I don't know what happened with YouTube, but suddenly the link started not working. So of course I had to create another one on the fly. I don't know if you're watching this because I'm refreshing YouTube, but I hope you are. Let me see. And we're live. So yes, I wish you heard that. But again, so sorry, with a problem, connection. YouTube didn't work, so I have to create another link. I sent links to the link to YouTube and to Twitter and Facebook. So I hope you saw it there. I see 5 people are connected, so that's good news. 7. Okay, go up, go up, go up. First of all, hello, Sarah. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing okay today. How are you?
Wanting to kill somebody at YouTube, but I won't do it. But aside of that, just give me a minute. So I say my public service announcement of the day. Well, the day, I say it every day, but every day. Wear your fucking mask. Let me repeat. Wear your fucking mask. The mask, although it protects you, that's not the point. It's not meant to protect you. It's to protect others from you. That's why we use the mask, to protect our elders, to protect our children. If they tell you that kids don't get COVID-19, that's a lie, and they can die. Think about your elders. Think about your loved ones. Think about the people you haven't seen in 6 months, and suddenly you're such a fucking idiot that you decide the best thing you're gonna do is the first is gonna kiss him, her, hug him, her, without a mask. You can kill them, and you can also cause incredibly horrible chronic illnesses. It's not just about dying, it's that it's known already about people that 8 months, 6 months, 5 months after, they still have lung problems, encephalitis, and all the kind of problems caused by COVID-19. So please, wear your mask. And last but not least, as I always say, if you think your freedom is too important, which means you don't care about anybody else's safety or well-being, leave this fucking channel now. I don't want you here. With that said, sorry about that, Sarah, but I have to say.
No, full support.
Thank you. How are you doing? How's things in your neck of the woods? Have life improved in any way, or still crazy? Again, capital letters, crazy.
Things are always crazy. We just moved into a house actually in the Hudson Valley. So I'm sitting here in my new office. It's very bare right now. Obviously, I don't have it fully set up. Yesterday, I was answering some emails sitting on the floor because my desk wasn't set up yet. But it's coming together, and I'm looking out my window right now. It's snowing this morning, so it's very idyllic.
Nice. So imagine my name has changed. My name is Victor Frankenstein now. I'm your doctor. This is my vaccine, which is a Rotring pen, but you know what I mean. Just popped it into you and said, it's over. Pandemic is over. Everybody is vaccinated. Even the anti-vaxxers have gotten it. Jim Carrey too. All those guys. And we said, okay, what's the thing you've been missing the most? Like crazy for the past few months, and that you're dying. I said, the first thing I could do is this one.
First thing, I think I would go to Little Frankie's in the East Village, which is one of my favorite pizza spots in New York. I miss going to restaurants, that they're open technically. I see some people going and like sitting inside, but I'm not about to play that chess game. So I've been very, very careful, So I really miss going to my favorite cozy spots, and especially the winter in New York. It's wonderful to walk down the street and pop into a spot and have a warm cocktail somewhere. So that's probably the first thing I would do.
Yeah, warm is a very good word in New York in this time of the year, because you're moving and you have to be covered like this, except for the eyes, because I have some wind. Like, oh, I just got a cut in my face. So yeah, something hot cocoa in New York sounds great.
Yes.
And she just said pizza spot New York. If you haven't tried pizza in New York, guys, you don't know what life is. You just don't.
It's a cliche, but it's true. Like it really
absolutely
doesn't parallel.
I don't know if you say bagels or bagels, but bagels. Bagels in New York, pizza in New York. If you haven't tried bagels and pizza in New York, you don't know what life is. I'm sorry. You have to do it. It's like having pulpo in Milan in Galicia or whatever. But in New York, you have to do it. Talking about that, it's pizza the food you miss the most about restaurants, or is there anything else that you say like, oh my god, I miss having a taco or something like that in this place?
I mean, that place in particular, Little Frankie's, is one of my favorites because of the ambiance and the food. So I miss them both. But I mean, New York is full of amazing food. I miss the Dominican taco place that I would run up to in Harlem sometimes. I miss I have a German restaurant in my neighborhood that is amazing, and I miss going in there. I love all kinds of food, so I miss all of it.
There's a reason I like you so much, and we're so good friends. We all love food. I am friendly with, as you will know, the people that like food and me tend to be really good friends. So that
Yes.
always works. Um, why comics? Of all the possibilities in life, why comics? Why did you fall into this trap? I mean, in this amazing thing.
You know, I came to comics a lot later than a lot of people did. I didn't really read them as a kid, and I, read a few of them in high school, but not really religiously at all. But I fell into it in grad school actually because I was really drawn. I was this is very academic, but I was writing about the abject, which is the idea of something that is like a bodily kind of horror that uh, it's something that's there, but also the people are repulsed by it, like menstruation or childbirth, for example. So I was writing about those kinds of things and fell into some She-Hulk stuff because She-Hulk really represents a lot of those anxieties about the female body. So I came into it in a very academic way, but I read every She-Hulk comic, and then I found out that Marvel did internships, and I was like, oh, well, I want to be in publishing. This will be really interesting. And I got a internship in the trades department, actually. They were they were digitizing old files, and they were going through books and creating a database where you could look up, how many times the Fantasticar appeared, for example, or, where the Hulkbuster armor first appeared. So my first internship, it was my job to read Fantastic Four and archive all of these, buildings and characters and suits and items. So I read something like 300 issues of Fantastic Four in a summer and got really a crash course in Marvel Comics history that way. And then I loved it. I don't know. I was hooked. I loved the sort of atmosphere of the offices. I'd done internships and done jobs with other publishing houses, and it was a lot stiffer and a lot, it felt like a lot more kind of politicking in terms of how you chose like what books were going to succeed. And I liked that in Marvel, everybody was just very passionate, right? You pitched projects because you really believed in them and you loved them. So it was a different model for me, and I was like, why would I do, this boring politicking thing when I could do this like wild, crazy, pulling from all over kind of stuff. So yeah, that's really the process of it is what made me fall in love with comics.
Just between you and me, nobody's watching, nobody's hearing. How many times did you yell reading those comics about how they portrayed Sue Storm?
Oh man, it's rough, but she also had some great stuff. I kind of sort of love the like John Byrne Malice
No.
run.
I mean that of course I think John was the first one who changed her, make her
Mhm.
into the leader even. I mean the original Stan and Jack. Although we know, yes, of course, they're a product of their time, but I can stop myself when I read this one like, oh my god.
Yeah, it was hard. I'm not gonna lie. But I'm also really glad that I was kind of forced to do it because I don't know that I honestly would have sat down and read all of those old Fantastic Four issues otherwise. Because yeah, they are a little dated and they're clunky as well sometimes. But ultimately, Fantastic Four are still not my favorite characters. They've never been, but I understood why people loved them, why they were drawn to this very unusual family dynamic. So even though Sue had to be kind of the matriarch, she does get some cool stuff, and the fact that she even gets a power of her own and is an integral part of that team, I think was not really something that a lot of people were doing at the time. So it feels dated to us, but I think at the time it was actually quite progressive.
Absolutely. It was, and it changed things. I mean, without that, you don't have Marvel.
Right.
And every evolution that you guys as editors have been able to do, is because of that, and also because of the environment in the office. As I've been there a lot of times, as you know. Well, of course you know, and by the end of the day, it's a sorority or a fraternity, if you want to call it. It's everybody's friendly, everybody talks to each other. It's not like as you just said, like a. I was going to say like a real office, but you know what I mean. It's not like
Yes.
other kind of offices where cubicles are separated, nobody speaks, and if they can, oh, I'm going to steal that artist away from you.
Right, right.
You guys just go
There is a
from,
little bit of that, but
no, but you guys go from one office to the other, and you know, I love that. Many times I get emails from you or somebody else. I could love to work with this or that. Don't worry, I've already talked to this other editor, and that other editor sends me an email in a second saying, "Don't worry, they already talked to me." So
right.
I know for a fact that you guys speak about it, which is for me it's always been really refreshing to be able to count on the fact that if we make any moves, the artist or myself, we know you guys have our back.
Right.
It's not going to be against anybody else in the office. You know, I was talking to Ricky about something yesterday, and he was like, "Oh, thank you for doing this." And my only answer is like, my only answer is the one I always give you guys, which is the truth. Is if I do this, is because I know you guys care. If I didn't
Yeah.
know you guys care, my reactions could be completely different. It's very important in this question. I'm speaking too much. How important it is for you to see that you and the team you work with in any book really care about it. Heart
Yeah,
first, and then brains.
absolutely. I mean, I have worked with writers and artists who were clearly not fully invested, who had a lot of other things on their plate, and you can tell when somebody's phoning it in or they're not really as excited as they should be. And that's the biggest bummer in the world because, comics doesn't pay very well and it's really hard and you shouldn't do it unless you really, really love it. Um, but I'm lucky that 98% of the people that I work with are fully invested and enthusiastic. And my favorite thing is when I'm able to put a writer and an artist together and they can talk over layouts together and go over designs and really feel like a collaboration. So I feel like my job is less of going through and making sure that something is like correct or whatever, and more of the social glue. I'm putting these people together so that they can create something better, and that's the best feeling.
Mm-hmm. And how many times do you feel that you get a artist and writer together? And I always say that when that synergy is real, the first person who's going to feel it is the editor. Even before the artist and the writer feel it, the editor knows,
Mm-hmm.
that they have clicked. How many times have you felt there's not a writer and an artist anymore? They've created a third entity, and that's the reality of that book.
That's a little more rare when it's truly, truly gels. I have worked on, Al Ewing and Joe Bennett on Immortal Hulk. They gel that way. Al writes amazing scripts, but then Joe turns in these pencils and he might rework a whole spread and not really do what Al suggested at all, but it looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both really happy about it. Nobody's ego gets crushed. Al looks at it and he's like, Joe, you made this so much better than I imagined. This is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Kelly Thompson and Lee Garbett working together right now have a little bit of that synergy as well. Kelly is a very hands-on kind of writer, but with Lee, she really trusts him, and they're just able to kind of jump in and have a lot of fun with it. Definitely not every book feels that way, and sometimes as an editor, my job is a little bit more of like a go-between. But when it does work, those are books that I think fans can also tell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the books that come out and people are like, oh, this is new. I've not seen this before. And that's when you know that synergy is happening.
But just so you know, Javier Rodriguez just entered the chat.
Oh, yay!
Says, I'm late. No, don't worry, Javier, you're not late. We started late because of a glitch with YouTube, blah, blah, blah. So, been like 5 minutes, I guess. And says, David, send a big hug to Sarah. She's the best.
Oh, Javier, I love you.
We love him. We love him. Now that you're farther away, we love him a little more, Javier, a little less, Javier, because, you were closer before and we had lunch together. Now we can't. But we love. What is for you the fundamental thing when you're reading a pitch? And it's the same exact question I ask to an artist and a writer, because I think editors, I'm sorry guys, if you don't agree, it's your problem, not mine. You are part of the art team too. You are artists too. What is the first thing that punches you when you're reading a pitch? The emotions or the structure?
I'm a very analytical writer and editor, so I do.
No, I could never believe that.
So I actually do tend to look for structure first. I want to make sure that there are no plot holes, that all of the characterization feels right, that a writer is not doing, 9-panel grid pages over and over again and going to drive an artist crazy. So those are the first things that I'm looking for. And the emotional stuff has to be there. If it's not there, then that'll definitely be my secondary, kind of comment. But for me, it really comes down to the bones of what you've built. So when I'm working with a newer writer, for example, I really like to ask them to do page breakdowns before they write the script. So give me 2 to 3 sentences of what's going to happen on this page, because I can look at that and I can go, you've got too much going on here. This is going to take like 8 panels and you want a character reveal here too. Like, this is too much. You're going to have to spread it out. So yeah, I'm definitely a structure person first.
How important is for you the page turn?
Yeah, I mean, it's vital. It's what makes comics fun. And page turns to a certain extent are an editor's purview, because I'm the one who puts in the advertisements, for example, to make sure that those work, and that kind of stuff. But yeah, a lot of times you'll see a newer writer who will stack a page, like a 5-panel page, and then the last panel will be the reveal. And there are very many times when I'll go, no, we need to punt this over, and this is your splash page. Next page, you're going to have to condense elsewhere, because this is the big moment. You really need to get that excitement in there.
What do you think is the most unique thing comics have in terms of the language?
The most unique thing, I mean, I guess it is the collaboration aspect. Like, I don't know of any other kind of publishing that works this way. Even graphic novels and stuff at the traditional publishing houses don't really work the way that mainstream comics do. So the fact that you're working with all of these different people, all of these teams, your penciler, inker, colorist, letterer, pulling that kind of whole team together is really unique. But also, I love that we have a saying that comics have an unlimited budget, right? So you can put crazy explosions and really unrealistic stuff and wild manga style hair that would never work in real life. And like, those are the things that I really love, because that's what sets it apart from any other medium. There's a reason that, you read a comic sometimes instead of watching a movie. It's giving you something different.
And by the end of the day, the team is you, the other editor, in case, assistant, associate, blah, 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 writer, artist, colorist, letterer. It's like 5-6 people.
Right.
So the decision making is much faster and less, let me say it this way, less contaminated by the chorus of 200 people that have to make that movie, right? So it's a lot faster and also a lot more original in a way, right?
Yeah, you can have a lot more freedom with what you do, because we're not constrained by those budget problems, by those overview issues. I mean, we have a little bit of oversight. Like CB, our editor-in-chief, usually reads pitches and things like that. But part of the joy of being an editor is being able to really lay claim to a project and say, I'm the one who's helping build this. So that's, it's very unique in that way.
And also it's gotta be amazing, especially in these pandemic days, to be able to have a conversation with your boss, in this case, with either Will or CB, the director editor-in-chief, to sit down and discuss the pros and cons of a certain pitch, right? And see how to, because by the end of the day, that always makes it better, right?
Not always.
Okay, but let's say many times.
Most of the time, yes. I've definitely had a few books that like, kind of went to a committee and came back and wasn't quite what I was trying to build. Um, but yeah, for the most part, that's all really helpful. And, it's important to have somebody like CB there because he knows what the whole line is building. So if we're repeating beats that are really happening already in another book, there's no way for me to know that. So having that full collaboration with all of our editorial department is very key. It's weird right now because we can't sit in a room and talk about pitches. So we're doing stuff over email and over Slack, and there definitely have been times where I've gotten some feedback or some notes and just called them up and said, can we talk about this before we just send it out the way it is. So it's been kind of relearning our own editorial collaboration process.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, people doesn't realize how important it is to be able to sit down with the other person on just passing by his office or he passing by your office and just even 30-second chats. As I've seen, many times when I'm visiting you guys in the office, Axel before, CB later, just coming into the office for 30 seconds, just one comment. Of course, I don't know what the fuck are you guys are talking about, but I know that 30 seconds for you is like, okay, now I know I can move in this direction or the other. And that has been lost for the last few months, right? So, and it's not that easy. I try to explain to people those 30 seconds that you can have just walking by change many things. And you don't have, if you don't have them, it depends, as I said, on Stack or WhatsApp or whatever you use. And you have to stop what you're doing, focus on that. So it's completely different, right? So you have to relearn all the tools of your job.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of slowed things down a little too, because we've all got way more emails than we used to have, and we already used to have a lot of emails.
Yes.
So it's been a kind of a struggle for all of us, kind of learning how to adjust that and learning to reprioritize for what's most immediately on fire today. What do I have to fix today?
In terms of storytelling and music, for you, comics storytelling is a symphony, rock and roll, or jazz?
It's definitely rock and roll. Yeah. I mean, I love all of those things, but a little bit of a music, not a nerd per se. I don't know anything about music, but I listen to a lot of different kinds. But yeah, I think comics, especially mainstream comics, they really should be rock and roll, right? You should be big, bombastic, loud, colorful. That's what you're coming to a superhero comic for. If you're an Image book is a little different, but like Marvel and DC, I think you got to come out hard, you got to be surprising, and you got to have just a lot of fun with it. And if you're not having fun with it, the reader is going to be able to tell.
And I was saying that because I always consider comics in general a symphony because of the ups and downs, the valleys and the mountains. You go to a quiet moment and then boom, you go to a splash page. But rock. If you said progressive rock, I would say, yeah. But you know what I mean. When you're building a story for yourself, Javier is asking you. Leave a question for Sarah. If any time she has thought about writing scripts herself.
I have. I am working on a novel right now, and if I can get that into proper shape and hopefully get an agent for it, then yeah, someday I really would like to write comic scripts. But also, I love being an editor too. It's I wouldn't want to give it up, So maybe someday.
It's a completely different mindset too, right?
It really is, yeah. And I think that being a good editor would not necessarily make me a good writer. It certainly helps, but they are different skills.
Yeah, they're different. As I said, they're different muscles that you use every day. In one or the other. What is for you the most fundamental aspects of building a character? Let's talk about you can talk about rebuilding an existing character or a new character that is going to be added to the Marvel mythos. What do you think is the fundamentals that any new writer or artist or an artist should have in mind for that?
I mean, definitely the visual is the first and most important thing. That's how you get retailers on board. That's how you get fans on board. Show them something that looks fresh and new and exciting. And, from there, I think that the best kind of character pieces like that really, again, it comes down to that collaboration of the design should reflect who that character is and what their emotional needs are. So, for example, when we created Star in Captain Marvel and Carmen Carnero did that design, we put her in heroic clothes, even though we knew from the beginning that she was going to be a villain. And we did that very deliberately because that character really views herself as a hero. That's part of who, kind of her thought process and her feeling of like, anger toward other superheroes, and I can do it better than they can because I've had these dark experiences that really showed me what to do. And it caught fire. Retailers and fans looked at that. They thought she was a hero at first, and that got them really excited. And I think they loved it even more when she turned to a villain and she kept that costume because it's such a great look. And it pulls from Captain Marvel's look, but it's not a crib, right? It's a whole new look, but very much feels connected. So thinking about, keeping things in families, as Guardian characters should look as Guardian, Captain Marvel characters should look Captain Marvel, and then in addition, building in those emotional triggers.
And how important is to have the ovaries, the balls, or the guts, whatever you're gonna call it, to just say, like you guys have done with Hulk, with Thor and others. How important is to say now we have to break the cards, the decks card, sorry, you have to break the mold and say we have to go in a completely different direction. This character, even if he's been with us for 60 years, it's time to break it because what we've been telling has been told for many years, same stories all over again. When do you feel that happens from your side, from your view as an editor? You see, and then you get to the point where you decide that. What makes you decide these things?
Well, it's a combination of things. I mean, I'm going to be honest. The most immediate thing is very practical. With Immortal Hulk, it was like Hulk books haven't sold well for 10 years.
Yeah.
Something is broken. We need to fix it. And then for other ones, it's like Thor. That character was obviously very successful with Jason Aaron, and then we still did the redesign with Donny Cates, and that really was partly I think because Jason had been on that character for so long and had really put a very specific, wonderful handprint on him and on that world. And so when Donny came in, it was like, how do you compete with Jason Aaron? Well, you don't. You have to do something new. So we had to really start fresh and say, this is going to be a different kind of Thor, a different kind of story, and the visuals need to immediately tell fans this is something new.
And is there a character that you can mention that in the future, near future, is going through the same process of rebuilding? If you can't mention it, you know who I mean. So if you can't mention it, we'll just move on.
Yeah, I don't think I can bust that bubble yet, but there are a couple in the works.
And it's the same reason it needed. Let's be practical and say it this way: it needed to be done?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I can get more specific.
Don't worry. I honestly, I wasn't trying to pry anything out of you. I didn't know, honestly, didn't know if you could talk about it. So you guys know. Sooner than later. What is for you the importance of being open as an editor and as a creator yourself, to be open to what is not expected from you? And I mean, of course, you're a woman in comics. I'm not going to ask how is it being a woman in comics. Don't worry about that. That's bullshit. And I wouldn't ask a man. Why the fuck would I ask you? That's for you fans. If you're expecting that any day of this fucking month, it's not going to happen any fucking day of all the fucking month. Forget it. As I was saying, but certain things are expected from you. How much do you like to play against what is expected?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the best, right? Because people, creators and editors, can kind of get into a rut, um, and that's another thing that the comics community and the fans are very vocal and very in touch. And I'm not saying that necessarily I want my writers to go on Twitter and listen to the advice of every commenter on Twitter, but I mean that, like, if something is broken, the fans will tell you, right? So if a writer is struggling and they've kind of done the same stories for a while, you'll see that reflected pretty obviously. So when I go to a writer like that, I'm usually coming out with, like, let's not do something that we've seen before. So I'm going to ask myself, I'm going to, read some of their back catalog, and I'm going to ask myself, what's missing across the Marvel line right now? Where are the gaps that I need to fill? And can I push this writer or this artist into that gap so that we can both get something new for them and new for the line?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I think that in comics you have to play against type because these are superheroes. They've been around for 75 years, some of them, and if you can't tell the same story all the time. So it's definitely, when Captain America became Nomad, for example, that was huge, and it felt in some ways so against type, but it worked because that was something new and it made total sense for the character. It kept his moral integrity intact while changing the way that he interacted with the world around him. So that's kind of the tricky part that you have to play with the mainstream stuff is, like we were talking about breaking things too. You never want to break a character beyond repair, right? Once you take them to a certain step, it's like, well, how do you walk that back if it doesn't work?
Mm-hmm.
So you always have to make sure that what you're doing is new and fresh, but it also harkens back to who that character is.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like you're just ignoring 75 years of history.
Mm-hmm. Now imagine that you are Will Eisner, and I'm asking you. No, I'm kidding. I'm asking you, Sarah Brunstad. Do comics have any limits as a storytelling form?
Do they have any limits? I mean, sure, in the sense that, like, it's not scratch and sniff. You don't have sound, But in terms of the kinds of stories that we can tell and the new directions that we can go in, I think that comics right now are in a golden moment. And that's maybe a weird thing to say because a lot of people have anxiety about where comics are right now. And I understand that and I feel that too. But you look at the indie comics that are coming out, you look at the stuff that Image is doing, that Boom is doing, that Aftershock is doing, and you're going, this is new stuff. This is stuff that we have not seen in comics before. So I think part of the joy of being in the mainstream in the big two is that I get to look at those books and feel inspired by them and go, okay, how do I take the weirdness of a Zach Thompson book and put that into the Marvel universe? Is that something that we're missing here? So in that sense, I think, yeah, we're blowing the doors wide open in all kinds of areas.
Mm-hmm. And part of you blowing doors wide open is something that we're going to say now because it's got to be said. Congratulations, Sharon, your promotion to full editor.
Thank you. Yes, gonna be blowing lots of doors open. That's the goal.
How does it feel?
It's such a joyful feeling. I've been working under Will Moss for the past four. I think this is year 4.
And the wheel so much? Oh my God. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I've actually never worked with another editor. I always worked with Will, which was great. I mean, I love Will and he's phenomenally talented. So yeah, it feels wonderful just to have my work recognized and to know that, I'm making a voice, right? People now are starting to understand what a Sarah Brunstad comic looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really pumped to be able to put more of myself into the whole line.
You have, you're like in a trapeze now, and you're not going to have any safety net from now on.
True.
Some people could say that's scary. If I know you enough, you can't be more excited about that, right?
Yeah, basically. I love working with Will, and he gives me great feedback. He's a great senior editor, and I hope to continue to be able to work with him in that capacity. But yeah, I have fought hard to earn the trust for CB and the other editors to look at me and go, Sarah knows what she's doing. When she wants to cast this particular writer or this artist, it's not arbitrary. There's a reason she's doing that. So yeah, having that trust in me and being able to go out and say, I think this is the right thing and here's why, and kind of have the allowance to do that is really important to me.
And where do you think, what direction you think Marvel should go under your purview and as new editor-in-chief? No, I'm kidding. Seriously, what do you think is the path for you as an editor? What you are dying to do, have been dying to do, of course, since you started at Marvel, but like your vision.
Yeah, I from my very beginning, even when I was working in trades and doing prose novels and art books, I always wanted to bring in some more diverse talent. And I think that that's something that Marvel has been working on for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Axel certainly brought in a lot of fresh faces and diversified the line. But I always felt like we could push harder. And I think now, after the George Floyd and everything, it took way too long, but people are way more conscious than they used to be. And so now we're doing things like the Marvel Voices program. I got to build that Marvel Indigenous Voices, which was very dear to me. And I got to bring in people who, were brand new to mainstream comics and did a phenomenal job. And we're going to do more stuff with them. So building that line out, creating new entranceways into mainstream comics that don't require you to know the same 5 white guys who have been in the industry for 20 years, I want to create an open world where I get, for example, more pitches from women.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, I get cold pitched by men a lot, and I've never been cold pitched by a woman. I've had someone like do, kind of a casual introduction, but I've never had a woman just like email me a pitch out of the blue. Now, I'm not saying that that is necessarily an effective pitch tactic, but my point is like, women, I feel like don't, because we often have to work harder to get to the same place. I think that a lot of women kind of sell themselves short and think like, oh, I haven't earned the right to talk to this person yet. I haven't earned my space in that area. And I'm sitting here going, do you see all of the men failing up? Like, please send me your stuff. So that's really important to me, to broaden the line and make it stronger and make it more interesting and do more of that new characterizations, not breaking characters, loving characters, respecting their history, and pushing the whole line forward.
Yeah, with new names, new visions are
Mm-hmm.
going to just expand and make the Marvel universe richer, right? Anybody who thinks, as you said, the 5 white guys that always have been doing comics, that's a vision. I'm not saying it's wrong, but that's a vision. And the Marvel universe, as an icon of pop culture, let's say it that way, in
Mm-hmm.
comics and out of comics, it needs to be richer, right? It needs to be heard with the voices. Tanehishi is an example, with the voices of other kind of people, right?
Yes, exactly. It's supposed to be the world outside your window. And, Stan and Jack were great about that. They actually really did like pay attention to social issues that were going on. And you can see that infused in all those early comics. And I think that for a time, Marvel has kind of gone through a period of backing away from those stories. And I'm saying that that is the world that we have. So we need to interact with it.
Yeah, and that's in Marvel's core. I keep remembering, Stan's story, the Dragon story with Harry Osborn, and
Mm-hmm.
that Comics Code didn't want to prove, and he said, "Fuck it, I'm gonna tell it because this is a story we need to tell about drugs in
Right.
in the youth." So that's part of the Marvel core. When Marvel lost that in a big way for me, and I want to ask you if you agree. I think that stopped being Marvel.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know that there was ever like a deliberate moment or, that anyone did that intentionally. But when you back away from risky stories too often, then you sanitize things a little bit.
Yeah.
And, Immortal Hulk wouldn't work in that world. It works because it's an unsanitary book, because it's horrific and it's full of a wide range of characters who all bring these different experiences that reflect on who Hulk is, right?
Yeah.
McGowan, the transgender scientist that he works with, is a reflection of Hulk. So, you never want to shoehorn things in, and you never want it to feel preachy or, over the top. But like, if you're paying attention to the world around you, then those themes should be there, right? We should see a real world.
Yeah, the Marvel Universe should be, I completely agree with you, Marvel Universe should be a reflection of the real world. And if you don't touch the subjects that are happening in the real world, the Marvel Universe would feel fake.
Right, exactly.
So, Rafael Rodriguez, Sarah, congratulations. Signed, Raf from Captain Marvel News.
Yay!
Jackie
Hi.
Porte. Hey, Jackie, how are you? Says, congrats, and says, which character do you want to work with most? Probably you,
She-Hulk.
Jackie, probably you already know the answer because you guys were together. But anyway,
Yeah, Jackie is the head of our proofreading. She's amazing. That
everybody
character
say
is
hello to
definitely
Jackie too. Hello, Jackie. What are you saying?
that character is definitely She-Hulk for me. I've gotten to work with her a little bit. So like Al Ewing did a Immortal She-Hulk one shot and that kind of thing, but I've never gotten to work on a She-Hulk book. And that's my goal someday.
She-Hulk, John Byrne version, Dan Slott version, or something new?
Um,
Or Al Ewing, but
something new. There are things that I love about all of those versions. And then there are a few things that I really hate about all of those versions. So I loved what Mariko Tamaki did with her. And I'm not saying I would do the exact same thing, obviously, but that felt fresher. So yeah, I'd want to do something that calls back to all that old stuff, but really does push her in a new direction. Hopefully, in the same way that Al did with Hulk, he looked back and he read hundreds and hundreds of issues. He has his blog where he writes about all of the old issues as he goes back and reads them. And I want that kind of like attention and love and detail put into She-Hulk.
Can we lose the huge muscles, please?
No, I love the huge muscles. You're so wrong.
I'm fine with it. I'm kidding. If, as I always say, if an interpretation is well done,
Absolutely.
there's no bad characters. It's the way you tell the stories about those characters. Jackie is telling you hi tomorrow. Tomorrow what, Jackie? I think she's playing with us. Anyway, okay, we were talking about She-Hulk, but now as a whole, as a universe, how painful it is when you're trying to tell a story and you get a phone call or a visit to your office and says, crossover, you gotta stop the story arc you're telling.
Oh, well,
Don't answer that question if you can't.
I will say that at Marvel, I don't think that happens nearly as often as people think that it does. CB is pretty respectful about that kind of thing, and usually it's an option, especially on a main book, right? Like a Captain Marvel or a Thor. So, for the Captain Marvel series, for example, we did 2 tie-in issues into War of the Realms. That wasn't a requirement. CB didn't say you've got to do this, but I went to Kelly and I said, there's this huge line-wide event happening. She's a marquee character. I don't want her to be left out of this thing. It feels like we need to wrap into this and have fun with it. And we were coming up at a convenient kind of break in the arc where it made sense to bring in a guest artist and do a fresh story and then go back to the kind of main story that Carmen Carnero was drawing. So most of the time, I would say it works like that. It's an organic thing where you as the editor are trying to think about what's best for the character, what's best for the book, and also how can we best support this event. Because if you don't have, fans complain about tie-in books, but like if you didn't do tie-in books, then they would complain that the event didn't feel real or didn't feel big enough, So it's always about trying to find that balance. There have only been a couple of times where we got the edict that this book has to tie in. And most of the time, it's okay. You go to the writer and you say, there are so many fun pieces of this. We can find our little alleyway to tell our own story. We're doing that right now with Return of the Valkyries is tying into King in Black. And it's working really organically. We found our own little like hole in the King in Black, not like a plot hole, but like a little subsection that we were like, we can exploit this and we can develop this further because the main book's not going to have time to do it. So those kinds of things are what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. And it's also really funny because, as you know, fans keep complaining about crossovers, but then they keep buying them. And as I always say, if you didn't really complain about that and hated it that much, you couldn't buy it, so the company couldn't do them. They do them because you buy them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Put your money where your mouth is.
Exactly. So now Jackie says, tomorrow she means, agreed, I love buff She-Hulk. Tomorrow for She-Hulk, do it now.
Done.
And we have, hi, Torun, how are you? Torun Grumbeck is here too to say, yes. Hello, Torun, how are you? Did you hear that Sarah has been promoted? Say congrats. No. Structure-wise, if I am not, but I am a guy who wants to publish, to write a comic to be published by Marvel. I go to you as a writer and say, how does my pitch need to be? What does it have to have? And what, more importantly, what is the things that you say, never put that on a pitch?
If we haven't spoken and we don't know each other, don't send me a death of X character pitch, because the answer is no, right? It's just no.
It's tattooed in the editor, guys. It says, not again.
I would say that it's important to me that pitches that come in show a respect for the line, that somebody is paying attention to what has most recently happened to a character. So don't send me a pitch based on something that happened to them 5 years ago. And a pitch that is looking for those gaps that I was talking about. I don't want, like in traditional publishing, when you're doing query letters and stuff, it's often common practice to be like, my book is the next Hunger Games, and those comparisons are useful, but that's not really what I want. I don't want you to bring me the Avengers book that we already have. I want you to bring me the fresh one. Mm-hmm. So it really just is about paying attention. What's already there? What's missing? What's not working for a character? What do you think that you can bring to them that's going to fix it?
Mm-hmm. And then, do you cast? I mean, do you tell? Sometimes, I guess that's the case. More than one creator, more than one writer. Okay, I need a pitch for this book, and then you pick from of them, or this is something you don't like to do?
That is something we do sometimes, but I would say generally no. I prefer not to do it that way, and most of the editors that I know prefer not to do it that way, because part of your job as the editor is you are responsible for the creative team. And when you go to a writer and an artist, that's you saying, I think I know what this book is, and I think that's why this person is a good fit for it. So if I'm going to a bunch of different people looking for a pitch, then that kind of reflects to me that I don't really know what the book is yet. So I'd rather come in with a strong sense of what's needed. And then I can also help guide the writer and the artist a little bit better because I know what I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. Now, there are times when it's appropriate to do that. Like, for example, on Hulk, there were multiple pitches that Tom Brevoort had to choose from. And that made sense because that character was so broken that we really needed some new fresh stuff. Mm-hmm. So even though Tom had an idea of what he wanted for that book and knew kind of what he was looking for, he also wanted to see a range of perspectives and a range of ideas. So there are times that it's appropriate, but I would say 90% of the time that's not the way we want to work.
Absolutely, and that casting thing is something that I have never understood, because as I said, for me, an editor is also a creator. It's a creative part of it. And if you don't have a vision for a book, you don't know who you want for it. So
right.
That's about, for me, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, that's always about the start. If the editor doesn't know where she or he wants to go with a book. But at the end of the day, it's your vision that then goes to the people you've picked, to the book, and then you can have feedback and be happy with what you're doing. if you are casting for 6 people, and then the committee decides, if you are the editor, you cannot be happy with that book.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that you can't be happy with it, but definitely you're not going to feel as confident yourself. And if you aren't confident as the editor, then the writer and the artist are going to pick up on that too.
Yeah.
So for that team to really gel, you have to know what you're looking for. And also, that's the fun part of it, right? Is looking at a list of people and going, okay, if I put Kelly Thompson on this book, it's going to be this. If I put Jason Aaron on it, it's going to be this. And that's also a mark of a good writer and a good artist, that they have an identity. Which is not to say, that you should ever fall into a place where you're getting typecast, but like, yeah, I know what a Kelly Thompson book is, and that's good. Whereas somebody who's just coming up and just forming their repertoire, maybe I don't quite know what their perspective is going to be yet, and that makes them harder to cast.
And it's also the second part. You know what kind of a book Kelly's going to write, so of course you know that the artist forte to work with Kelly has to go in a certain direction. Like Carmen's is very amazing at facial and body expression, so that fits. Or
Right.
Lee, as you said before. Jason has another type of story, so okay, I have to go in that direction. That's part of, as we said before, creating that synergy, right? And again, it's part of the vision. You have a vision for that book, and it's about the whole thing. It cannot be about just one part of it.
Absolutely. And ideally, the writer that you're working with has an opinion about the art as well. I always try to talk to them about who we're casting, and there are times when we might disagree, and I might have to be like, I'm telling you that you need to trust my instincts on this. But for the most part, you want them fully on board and just as excited as you are. So that's definitely a conversation that you have.
Torrance tells you, yes, so happy for Sarah and great for Marvel. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Tara.
And Jackie, thank you for asking questions, Jackie. You're the only one who's asking questions. Guys, send questions. Jackie Porter says, what is an aspect of comic book creation that most writers struggle with?
So I'm gonna cheat and give 2 answers. The first thing that a lot of writers who are new to comics really struggle with is the pace. Putting too many actions into a single panel, too many panels into a single page, too much dialogue that's going to cover up all of the great art. So those are the kinds of things that you really look for as an editor and kind of break out for. And then the other thing that people really struggle with is the pace. We're putting out a book every month, and that means at a minimum, you need to have a script done every month. And usually you need to have 2 done because you're writing ahead for the next arc and a different artist. So, if you're writing 2 or 3 books, that adds up really quickly, 100, 120 pages a month. So I think, especially like when we go to novelists and try to bring them into comics, they're often kind of daunted because they have months and months to write these books, which is not to say they don't struggle with deadlines, but it's not the same as every 3 weeks me going, okay, I need another 20 pages and they need to be solid.
Let me see. Rafael Rodriguez says, loving this. Sarah is so amazing and talented. Captain Marvel book is such a huge success.
Thank you. It is. It's a great book.
And Carmen, hello, Carmen. Carmen is here. Carmen Carnero says, oh, thank you, Carmen. Says, run, Sarah is a trap. I love you too, Carmen. Well, you lost my train of thought, Carmen. Thank you. Now, now we go back. We go to the other side of the equation. We were working about the writer. And many times people think, and they can't imagine how hugely mistaken they are, that Marvel has a type of artist, a kind of artist. Is you have to draw a certain way to draw at Marvel, which can be real, could be real in other companies. We won't name here, but it's never been real at Marvel for, I would say, ever, because you have Ditko and Jack at the same time, who couldn't be more different, and then you have Buscema, Romita, and anybody else to this point. So, have you ever felt that there's a kind of artist that has to fit a mold, or for you it's completely different? As CB has always told me, no, it's not a kind of artist. It's an artist that fits the book no matter what his style is.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see that?
I would 99% agree with that. I do think that there are times that we look at an artist and realize that their style really doesn't quite work for the mainstream because it's not as sequentially based, for example. So the main thing that I'm looking for when I'm trying to cast an artist is style, yes, but like when I'm looking for new talent, I'm looking for what are their storytelling skills. So I'm constantly, one of the biggest frustrations is when artists post their stuff and then they don't have any sequentials and they want comic work, and it's like, I need to see, your illustrations are beautiful, but I need to see how you take a punch on the page. So there is a kind of standard in that sense. We need very dynamic storytelling. We need panels that look different with each time. We need creative layouts. We need any reader to be able to look at a page and understand, this is how I follow the flow of the page. That's very important, that a lot of new artists kind of struggle with. But yeah, in terms of, is there a house style for Marvel? Definitely not. It's very different. It's very dependent on the book. And even within a book, things can look very different. On Star, for example, we had Javier Pina doing the main sequences, which is great, dynamic superhero art. And then we had Felipe Andrade doing the flashbacks, which was very different, sketchy line work, more emotionally based, less of the big action stuff. So no, there's room for all kinds of stuff on the Marvel line.
Javier tells you Sarah is so good giving notes, something that people should put into value because it helps us creators a lot.
Good. Yes. I love looking at layouts. It's my favorite stage of the art. I mean, I love the finished art, but the layouts are the part where people can collaborate and where you get to see the artist putting their own twist on a script. So yeah, I always ask my artists to send me layouts, and I try to pay a lot of attention to all of the different pieces of it, because an artist might be thinking about, how do I break down the script the best, but they might not be thinking about, how do I lay out the dialogue? Are the characters placed in the correct order in the panel so that the dialogue's not going to have to do crazy loops all around? Kind of basic stuff like that. That, as the person who gets to oversee the whole thing, I'm in a unique position to be able to help with that.
Jackie, he's asking the same question I asked a minute ago. What is an aspect of comic book creation that most artists struggle with? Carmen and Javier would say deadlines. Giuseppe says, hi, I'm late today. Wanted to ask Sarah what kind of comics she enjoys reading for her own pleasure.
I love comics that are a little on the weirder spectrum. So I love a lot of the stuff that Aftershock has been putting out lately. And of course, I'm buds with Christina Harrington, who's their managing editor. And I love also things that don't fit into Marvel. I like to read a lot of that because, my whole day is full of mainstream superhero comics. So when I want a palate cleanser, I might go to a Lion Forge book and, read a super sweet little queer kid gardening adventure book. So I would say when I'm trying to escape and not necessarily think about it in terms of my job all the time, that's what I gravitate towards, is kind of softer, gentle, in some ways younger readers stuff sometimes. I don't read very many YA novels, but I love YA comics.
But there's also there's something that is always amazing advice for writers, which is don't only read comics, read everything. That's also amazing for editors, right? Don't only read superheroes. If you read comics, it's all kind of comics, because that's where you're to find the next big creator you're gonna need, or more inspiration for you as an editor for the direction of the books you're gonna go with, right?
Absolutely. And you want to recognize the things that are working in those other books that are not mainstream and bring them over where you can. So like, what DC did with Far Sector, N.K. Jemison's book, that to me, doesn't really feel like a mainstream superhero book. It is in some ways, but it's really its own like classic sci-fi space adventure. It feels very different. It feels very fresh.
Mm-hmm. Jackie is on a roll with her questions. What do you anticipate the greatest challenge of being an editor will be?
I mean, the greatest challenge. There are so many things about this job that are hard, to be honest. Probably it's going to be workload. My workload will increase, and there'll be a little bit more pressure on me. You know, there'll be more eyes, which like I said earlier, I'm looking forward to. But certainly, it's going to be a little daunting at first, and kind of falling into a new rhythm of, what are these new responsibilities that I'm taking on.
Mm-hmm. Giuseppe asked if you read any Italian comics, and he says, I am sorry, I always try to put Italian comics for an international audience.
I haven't read very many, but I would love recommendations.
There you go. Here's this as I always say, Scorto Maltese, and then there's the rest. So that's the first one. If we go back to talk about language and storytelling for a while, let me know if you agree with this. It's my crazy. I know I always say it every day. Some people hate me, but I have to. I think comics is the only art form that can defy Einstein's theory of relativity.
Okay.
Let me explain why. You're watching a movie, the arrow of time is always this way. You're reading a novel, it always goes this way. With comics, you control, as a creator, you control space and time. You can move forward, you can go backwards, you can stop time, you can manipulate the size and the shape of the panels. You can say, I'm going to stay in the same second for 20 pages, or make it every panel a different second. So that's what I was talking about with the limits before. That's one of the only things I think comic can do. How important it is for you as an editor to be able to play in that sandbox, to not have to be linear, and to be able to tell your creators, you don't have to be linear. Just build your story, moving back and forth. If it makes sense, we'll make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is one of the fun things about it. And again, when you're looking at layouts, that's one of the things that you're asking yourself is, does the time frame on this page feel right? Are we spending the right amount of time on this, a really emotional moment, for example? Does it need 2 panels instead of 1? Do I want to slow down the action here because, there's some special effect happening? So yeah, I think you got to have fun with it. And also on a practical level, those things can be really useful. Peeling back the curtain a little bit, a lot of the times you use flashbacks to help relieve the main anchor artist on a book. So it's also about like playing with the form to make the collaboration better and relieve some of the pressure on your artist.
And by the end of the day, people, as I always say, this is Monday comics. They gotta go out. Sometimes you make decisions and you guys get mad as readers, and it's fine that you get mad at readers, but people has a life and things happen. And sometimes it's not bad faith from the editor, bad faith from the artist, bad faith from the writer. No, it's just life. And it's a monthly book. And sometimes it's just not possible to make it work.
Absolutely.
So
and it's especially hard on artists, I think, artists and colorists, because if things break down, like if I don't do my job fast enough, and then the writer takes too long to do the script, then the artist and the colorist really get stuck on the back end with trying to make up work sometimes. So one of my main goals as an editor is always to make sure that everyone down the pipeline is being taken care of.
And it's also having a plan, right? How ahead do you try, or ideally would you like to work? And in reality, how many time in advance can you work with? Because ideal worlds, utopias are nice, but they don't happen, guys.
I mean, in an ideal universe, I would love it if we were able to start working on books and putting together pitches like 5 months ahead of the first issue's print date. because that really gives you a lot of time to sink into the outline, to get it really solid, because I think a lot of writers underestimate how much help an outline can be. If you turn in a soft outline that really, breaks down only the first 2 issues, and then you go, oh, it's okay, I'll figure out how to fill out 3 and 4. I'm always going, you're probably not going to figure that out. So we should try to do that now. Because I've been in that seat too many times where you're running too fast, and then you get there and you're like, shit, like there's this huge plot hole because we were moving too quickly, and now we have to do some awkward backbending in order to make the story really make sense. So yeah, 5 months ahead of time would be my ideal. Most of the time we're soliciting books 3 months ahead of time. So that's kind of your minimum deadline to start talking to someone. But truthfully, we've had to build books basically with like 30 to 60 days of lead time, which is nuts. Yeah, you hate doing that because you're rushing everyone, including yourself. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do. There's not enough books on sale. You got to fill a gap. You got to do it.
Yeah, you touch on a very important subject that also to me, in the little times I've written, for me, is also really important. The outline is the backbone, and many people doesn't realize. They just think everything is in the script. And I always say, if you don't have a solid basis, a solid foundation, as in a building, the story sooner or later is going to fall.
Yeah.
So, as you just said, for you, that's the backbone. Is that what makes you believe that comic is going to succeed? The outline.
Yes, it is the outline. That's when I know I can see all of the pieces. I can build better covers that way because I know what the concepts are going to be. And if I can build better covers, then the book will sell better. I can think about designs ahead of time, so we are not having to rush those at the last minute. There are just so many things that work better when you have your story laid out ahead of time. And for an artist, it's really a boon too, because if you can give an artist an outline for the whole 5 issues, then they're not going in blind. They get to go in and say, I know where this story is going, so I can put in these subtle changes that are going to build through the whole arc. So one of the worst things you have to do sometimes is give an artist a partial script because you're out of time and you need them to start drawing. But I hate doing that because you shouldn't have to draw page 1 until you know what page 20 is going to be, because it's so helpful to be able to just lay it all out and figure that out. So it's outlining for the writer, but also like an artist doing all of their layouts before they start penciling any pages is also really important.
Yeah, that was going. Thank you for anticipating. That was going to be my next question, which is how much do you hate having to give an artist partial scripts?
Yeah, it's terrible. I feel really bad, but sometimes, again, you're 5 weeks away from the print date and you don't have a full script and you just got to start drawing.
Yep, that's what we said before, guys. Life happens for whatever reason. There's delays, internal, external, illnesses, whatever it happens. As I was talking to Gary Frank like 3 months ago, and of course people was asking him, when are you going to come to Spain for a convention, blah blah blah, and we just stopped and said, people has a life. If they have a family, they work 14, 16 hours a day drawing, they cannot see their family, and you're asking them to get away for a full weekend to go to a convention when that's the time they have to see their family. You have to understand that the human being is above and is more important, than the other part, which is the job, right?
Yeah.
So,
and artists have it really tough because they really don't get vacation time. You're a freelancer, and if you're waiting on that next paycheck, then you just got to keep rolling. And it's also difficult as an editor sometimes because you go to them and they say, well, I want to do this book, but I need 2 weeks off in August. And you're like, this book can't afford 2 weeks off in August. Like, what am I going to do to fix that? So you have to get creative sometimes, for sure.
Yeah, that's a good word. That's a good way to say it. You gotta get creative. Let me see. Jackie asks, "Who's your favorite villain?"
Oh man, who's my favorite villain? It might be Hela. I love, a sassy female, powerful villain. So Hela is great. Her design is awesome. Her character motivations are really complex. And she has, I like her too because she's not just a villain straightforwardly. Like she has a role in the mythos. She is the guardian of hell. So you can't just eradicate her the way that you can other villains. She has to be there. So I like the idea of these kind of constant figures. I think that's what makes mainstream comics fun, is
Mm-hmm.
that you've got these parameters that you can then twist and move around. So Hela to me is a good example of that.
Mm-hmm. And how important it is for you for a villain to define the hero. I mean, the complexity of a villain. How important for you is to read a script and understand the complexity of that character.
Absolutely. A flat villain is just that. It's going to fall flat. The stakes for a story need to be high, and if the villain doesn't feel real or their motivations don't feel complex enough, then that story doesn't feel real, and the stakes don't feel real. Um, so one of my least favorite things is when writers come in and they make jokes out of villains. I'm always about, we need to rehab villains. Sure, Trapster is hilarious, but like, surely we could do something fun with him, something cool. And there's a time and a place for those kind of tongue-in-cheek portrayals, but your arc can't revolve around that. It's got to feel like a real threat, and the hero has to have unique challenges to fight through.
Mm-hmm.
A Carol Danvers versus Thanos is fun. That's big. That's universe ending. A Carol Danvers versus the Hood, not so much. You got to pair characters by power levels and abilities, and make sure that you're not punking the villain or the hero. They both need to come out feeling fierce.
Mm-hmm. And how important is that the heroes keep their feet of clay?
Um, can you go into a little bit more about what you mean?
No, feet of clay. Is that the remember that maybe I did the wrong translation from Spanish to English. I mean, when the heroes Marvel started, of course, DC heroes before Marvel were immortal means they didn't fail. They were always correct. But Marvel heroes starting Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, they made mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I meant with feet of clay.
Gotcha.
How important is for you that is still the basis of what a Marvel hero is?
I definitely, the difference is very clear. We try to make our characters feel very human. They need to feel vulnerable, even if they are very powerful heroes. Because again, if that vulnerability isn't there, then you're kind of missing the stakes. For me, a story, the threat has to be both a plot device and an emotional core. And if the emotional core is not there, then the plot device is going to fall flat.
Mm-hmm.
And it also leaves you a lot of room to progress characters in new ways. So, for example, Reed Richards, when he was originally written, is a pretty much impenetrable good guy. He's a great scientist, he's a good dad, he's a good husband, everybody loves him. But more recent portrayals have had the opportunity to dive into something a little darker, right? We've seen a Reed Richards who makes the wrong decisions sometimes because of his arrogance, because of his ego. And I love being able to dive into those vulnerabilities in the characters and exploit them and push them new directions out of that.
And portraying those darker sides of Reed has also shown us how uh, similar in the end him and Victor Bonduma, right? They are both
Right.
sides of the same coin. Does that make, in your opinion, for that rivalry or for that book a lot more interesting?
It does, yeah. I mean, you saw that in Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars.
Yep.
That book worked because Victor was an extremely complex villain who, yes, was a despot, but also in many ways, genuinely wanted a better world and just was not capable. He did not have the imagination to do it. And that imagination is what saves everyone. That's what Reed brings to the table that Victor doesn't have.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think playing off of those arch enemy pieces and recognizing the ways in which those characters work because they are connected,
Mm-hmm.
I think is important for sure.
Imagine you just become the Beyonder, and you can pick any characters from the competition, any characters, being creator owned, being company or whatever. And it's like, I want to edit that character or book, and you just grab it and take it and just edit it. Which one would that be, or which ones? You have 5 picks if you want.
Um, this is probably a cliche, but it would definitely be Wonder Woman. I'm going to be honest, I'm a little bit underread on DC history. I haven't done a lot of the major stuff, but I've always loved Wonder Woman. I think she's amazing. I think that anybody who backs away from her role as a feminist is a coward, and that's what I want. I want an ultra feminist, patriarchy ass kicking Wonder Woman. So that's definitely what I would take.
Mm-hmm. Just one? Okay, that was easy. That was easy. And imagine again, you're still the Beyonder. You're gonna be for the next time. The time we're speaking here, something that you see is missing in comics, and I don't mean in Marvel, because you work for Marvel and there's certain things, that are missing in comics that you say we need it, we need that happening, because as you said, in Marvel, you're working in indigenous voices, you're going in a certain direction to expand.
Mm-hmm.
But as a woman, I would hate to say as a woman, as a human being, what do you think it's missing from comics that we need to see?
I think that, yeah, we need more stories that reflect, I think, the huge complexities that that millennials and Gen Z are dealing with. So, for example, this is very specific, but for me, one of those things is the environment, and really getting away from the typical post-apocalyptic stories that we've seen in the past, and asking ourselves some more questions about what is the world really going to look like in 20 years, which is a scary enough thought without thinking of Mad Max necessarily. So I want to redefine some of those future visions, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't been announced yet, but I am working on a book that is trying to do just that. So I'm very excited for that. And we dabbled in it in Power Pack as well. The new one with Ryan North and Nico Leon. We're going to deal with some energy lack in the world. So things like that. Looking for, I think future visions is a good way to think of it. Like, the old comics were great about asking themselves, what the future would look like, and the writers of that time were even read scientific papers and studied, sort of things like relativity theory, and you can see that infused into a lot of the old comics. So I would love to see that as well, some informed future visions.
Mm-hmm. Also, why there's no COVID-19 in the Marvel universe?
So we have talked about it.
I know.
And and people have different opinions, but I think most of us are agreed, and I certainly feel this way, that right now that threat is so real and so present and so pressurizing.
Yeah.
I want to go to comics to escape from that.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to comics, and plus, like, as an artist, can you imagine drawing masks on crowd scenes? I mean, God, they're already hard to draw. It just, I think it's depressing. I just think you want to go in and not think about the literal deadly threat outside your door right now. So I want us to feel like an escape, a place where you can come and feel a little bit of joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get asked that a lot about why there's no, and I answer the same thing. You want escapism when you're reading superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
We have enough, being at home, not being able to see the people we love, So to have that in our comics, we want to read every month. You want to, you want us to, shoot ourselves in the head? No, we want escapism, and that takes me to another side of this. How big do you think the explosion of creativity is going to be? Also on your side as a novelist, but so I include you on this. When we get off this, I think there's going to be a huge explosion of creativity of all the months we've been, indoors.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people we don't expect is going to happen. Do you think that's going to happen? That we are going to have a huge explosion of creativity in the next year?
I hope so. I certainly know that a lot of people have been very productive in this time and written stuff. Even my coworker, the great Alana Smith, wrote a book during the first months of COVID. So
She's
I
writing
certainly,
she's writing the second one already, right?
she is, yeah, she's working on a new one. So yeah, I certainly hope that there will be an explosion like that, and I hope and I fear that corporations are not going to look at that as something that is, valuable and important. So I think that we need to put pressure on our corporations to open up those doors, to tell those stories, to value them, and to not cut away the humanities and cut away the arts in the name of austerity, because those are the things that are going to help us survive. And if we don't imagine those futures that I was talking about, then we're going to be blindsided by them. So we need to have all of our creative brains kind of fusing together and looking ahead together, because it can't just be scientists fixing the world. We've all got to do it, and we've all got to put ourselves into that energy.
Yeah, in the last crisis here in Spain in 2014, the first thing they did, it was, of course, a right-wing party, and the first thing what they did was to cut the funds for research in science and, of course, for culture and arts.
Mm-hmm.
And people was complaining about the science part, and I kept saying, no, we need both. Arts and sciences are both sides of the same coin. We need both.
Absolutely.
We need to be able to grow with the art and grow with the science. As Arthur C. Clarke used to say, magic is the science that we still don't understand.
Yes.
So we need both sides, right? And also, in your case, as a novelist, as you said, is that a path you want to follow fully, or you would like to always stay being an editor and also a novelist?
I mean, to be honest, that question feels really far away.
Okay.
I think for right now, I'm really happy at Marvel. I just got this promotion. I don't want to run off anywhere. But 15 years from now, I don't know. I definitely want my name on bookshelves someday.
Mm-hmm. And is there any story as an editor that you've been dying to tell in Marvel Comics, aside of She-Hulk? She-Hulk, we forget about She-Hulk. You've been trying to tell, and it doesn't matter the character. I mean, story that you're saying this story needs to be told. That you've been dying to do, and that you are not going to leave, retire, or die without having that story told.
I don't think that there's a specific story in that sense. I do think that the environmentalism thing is important to me. I want to play more with body horror. I want to take what Immortal Hulk has done and push that forward in new directions, which actually, harkens back to my origins again, and that idea of the abject. So, yeah. But I can't say that there's like a specific story, because I never want to go to a writer and have them feel boxed in by what I'm doing, right? I always want to come to them with something that is a good prompt, is specific in that it gives them parameters, but it's also wide open for them to do whatever. So yeah, I can't say that there's a specific story exactly, just themes.
Okay, so you'll have to write it yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. And Jackie says, "How does I didn't know about this, so news to me. How does your D&D interest interact with your day job?"
Yeah, I play D&D with Jackie and Alana and a few other folks in comics, and we've been playing for Yeah, I think we're coming up on 2 years now. And it's been wonderful. I love D&D. I love the adventure setting. I think that um, playing D&D helps your skills as a storyteller because you are thinking about, what's the pace of the story? How do I build good villains? How do I build good NPCs? Um, and how do I make it the most fun for the players? What are the objects that I want to leave? What are the plot threads that I want to leave dangling for them? But it also forces you to be very collaborative and to not be precious about stuff because your players are going to choose something that you inevitably did not anticipate.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be able to roll with the punches and not feel, offended because they didn't open door A.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think D&D helps with storytelling, but it's a good ego suppressant.
Thank you for telling me that, Jack. I didn't know about the D&D. Says great questions, David. No, thank you for your questions too. You're helping a lot today. And what is more important for you, Sarah? The journey or the destination?
Definitely the journey. Yeah, always process.
Why?
Because
Did you like to be? I mean, you like to be immersed on it and just go through the journey and see where it takes you, or it's again structural, going
Uh,
point to point.
right. So I mean, in terms of building a book, it's structural. I'm thinking about the destination. Yes. Where does this character need to start the arc, and where do they need to be when we end? What are the changes that we need to see so that the story feels like it matters? Um, but at the same time, comics are a very transient medium. If you are very lucky, then your book will be remembered for more than 5 years. But we make 70 books a month, and I'm telling you that more than half of them are not going to be remembered for more than 5 years. That's just the reality. So it's also about having fun with the process,
Mhm.
having a good time with the book that you're making the best book that you can, and just entertaining the readers as they're there with you.
So in that sense, it's the journey,
Yes.
and that takes me to how important it is for you after a while when it was some books. It was before your time. Don't worry. Some books were clearly written for the trade.
Hmm.
How important for you is that to give a reader in every issue a start, a beginning. I'm sorry, a beginning, a middle, and an end. That they can come home. Well, if they read it home normally, you know what I mean. But they end at the issue saying, "I know there's a longer story, but this has satisfied me because I got a full thing."
Right. I mean, that's what makes comics, again, separates it from a lot of other mediums. If you don't get a hook that's going to draw you to the next issue, then you have kind of failed in your mission. And I do think that we are moving towards a more trade heavy market, which in some ways is a really good thing because it brings in new readers, people who don't go to comic book shops, who don't do pull lists. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that people should be able to read comics any way that they want to read them.
Absolutely.
And I personally am a big trades fan. But what makes comics special is that they come out every month. That's part of what we do, and it's our meat and potatoes. And you've got to have that hook for people to keep coming back, to be excited about it. So you really have to serve both markets. And I think somebody who's a master of that would be like Jonathan Hickman. His every issue is really dense and complex, but it has its one problem. Each issue has one problem, and it either solves that problem or leaves you in a place where you have to get the next issue to know how they're going to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And then his books also, I always read his books in single issues and trade because I go back to the trade and I'm like, oh man, by the time I got to issue 5, I totally forgot about this little piece that he left in issue number 1, and now it comes full circle.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the master writers and the master artists are able to do both.
Mm-hmm. And if I told you, just became the Beyonder, and if I told you from now on, you're going to edit, half of your books are going to be monthlies, and half of your books are going to be graphic novels, full thing. Could you take it?
Yeah, I would take it. I think that would be interesting, honestly. I think that there are some projects that are really well suited to going straight to graphic novel. So, you know, for example, the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl,
Mm-hmm.
that book did just okay in single issues. You know, it was selling like 8 to 10,000 copies a month, which is not a lot. But the trades did gangbusters because we figured out how to market them, and we made connections with people who could get those books into the right hands. So I think that you know, part of Marvel's mission and part of the mission of really everybody working in comics right now is to figure out how to work both of those markets, so that we're drawing in readers from all over the place and not just your traditional comic book readers. So yeah, I would have no problem with that mission. I think that a balance would be fine.
And
I
how?
never want single issues to go away, but a
No,
balance
no,
would be
no,
fine.
no, no. I wasn't. That's why I say half and half. No, I love monthlies, please. And and how do we get those readers?
You do it by, so for example, you know, my Indigenous Voices issue that I built. One of the things that we discovered there was that if we made connections in the Indigenous communities, then they would help us sell that book. They would put the word out, and people got really excited because they'd never seen anything that was marketed for them
Mhm.
before, that was brand new. And the book did really well. It performed really above expectations. So I think that we have to build more relationships. We have to look at places like, you know, the Raina Taglemeyers of the world and say her books are selling so hot. How do we tap into the people who are reading those books? So some of it is bringing in different talent. Some of it is forming new marketing relationships. Some of it is changing the way that we market in general. You know, maybe we need to revisit kind of ratings and cover colors and you know, things like that. Being more conscious of this is who we're targeting and this is how we're going to get out.
Mhm.
Your traditional publishing companies are really good at that. They form very specific marketing plans. Because we're making so many books, we don't always have time to do that. And I would love it if we could slow it down just a little bit and put more time into that marketing so that each book has a better chance to succeed.
Mm-hmm. And you just mentioned Raina Tegelmeier. I always use her as an example, saying that's the real world. You know, it's one thing is the diamond chart, and then it's the book scan, and that's the real world.
Mm-hmm.
That is the world which you want to reach, right? As a creative person, as an editor, every time somebody asks, is it for you automatic to say that's where we're gonna get? That's the kind of readership we want to get. How wide we want the Marvel universe audience to be?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the sky is the limit. There's no reason why we should still just be targeting, you know, men ages 25 to 50. We should have all kinds of books made by all kinds of people for all kinds of readers. And in an ideal universe, you'll have books that work for multiple markets.
Yeah.
I think Squirrel Girl was an amazing read for children and adults.
Mhm.
Um, so the more books we can get like that, the better.
Yeah, and also I don't know if you want to say it, but I'm gonna say it. Women are the future of comics, guys. They are. That they are.
Absolutely.
They are the only future. If we don't have women taking charge of comics as creators in other capacities, no CB is nothing against you. I love you. Uh, they are the future. You
Yeah.
can say it if you want, but I'm sorry, I have to say it. And
No,
I've
it's
told you
true.
this in person, in private many times, so you know I'm not bullshitting. Giuseppe asked you, do you see room in today's Marvel comics for a new epic line of comics, create your own project for adult readers?
That's a good question. Truthfully, I don't know because you know DC did that with Black Label, and it's not the way that I would have done it. Let's say, you know, I think that there's a tendency sometimes to want to put out books that are for adult readers in the sense that they're just very violent or you know very kind of ugly in that way. And there's a place for those books, but that's not the only thing that we can do. And you know, putting Batman's dick in a comic is not going to sell it for me. So I think that it's something you have to be careful with. You have to be thoughtful and ask yourself, like, why is this book going to go on an epic line or a max line, for example? Um, and I also know that historically, when we separate our line that way, they don't tend to sell super well. And I don't really know what the reason is exactly, but I would guess that it's because it ends up feeling like an even more niche market within a niche market.
Yeah.
So you're narrowing your audience even more, and I kind of think that's the opposite of what we need to do. But that said, I feel differently about it if we're doing like a kids line. That's a very different kind of setup. So yeah,
Because it feels natural.
exactly.
Comics started being for kids, so it feels natural to return and make kids comics big. As I said, I always say kids comics should be bigger and romance comics should be bigger. And people say, romance, why? Because they were a huge part of comics, and it just feels natural for comics to go that direction, right?
And we know that they're successful because romance webtoons and romance webcomics get huge readership.
Yeah.
We just have to figure out how to reach those readers.
Yeah, and I still remember and love some McKeever's, uh, Mary Jane loves Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that feels natural. And as I don't know if you're going this direction about Black Label, but I'm gonna say it. I think Black Label was a mistake because it's making grim and grittier superheroes that have become for more mature readers for 20 years already. So it's just what we need: more violence, more grittiness. We have enough of that. We had Vertigo. Yeah. That's why I still miss Vertigo. Vertigo gave us something else. It didn't give us the superheroes. It gave us maybe sometimes you had superheroes in there, but what Karen and the other wanted is to give us something different. That's why I would love to see in Epic. I couldn't like to see more mature adult blah 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 Marvel heroes. You already had that.
Yeah.
You are not going to tell Jason or Hickman, oh, you cannot tell mature stories. They already did.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the question here is, would you think Epic could be a good idea for Marvel if it did what Vertigo did, not being involved in the superhero thing, but other kind of characters?
Maybe, but I don't know. Part of me feels like, Marvel is a superhero company, and that's what it makes sense for us to do. And you've got places like Image that are out there putting out those creator-owned books, and they are excellent, right? I love them, but they're not what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, I would say that I don't know that is a need in our line right now.
Mm-hmm. Jackie says, "Get me some romance comics, Sarah."
Captain Marvel 27. It's going to be romance themed.
Notes. Captain Marvel news. I know you're around. Just do it. But yeah, Jackie, I'm completely serious about what I was saying about romance comics. I think romance comics need to come back much, much more than adult superheroes. We already have that. So let's go and do romance comics. And there's a lot of people who's going to love them. And Sarah will confirm. She knows the market much better than I do. A lot of people will buy them.
Yeah, I agree.
So we're A++, David. Oh, thank you, Jackie. I love you too. We've been at this for just so you know, 97 minutes, and I'm pretty sure you gotta go back to work.
That would be good.
One last one. Mm-hmm. If people doesn't ask more questions, you have your space, guys. So run. You have to write your epitaph right now, your eulogy, and say, "This is the mark I left in comics." What would it be? You can hate me now.
This is a hard question. I would like to be known as an editor who brings in new, exciting voices. I want to be someone who, kind of just help discover the next generation of comics.
That was amazing. So, all of you, thank you so much for being here. To you, Sarah, thank you for being here. Please don't cut because I want to say proper thank you after we're off the feed. But again, thank you. You're amazing. I love you. I miss you.
Oh, you too. I can't wait to go back to Spain someday, or go to Spain. I've never been, but someday, because you're gonna make me a proper paella.
Absolutely. You gotta come here. You gotta go. I gotta go. Well, I have to go there. So one way or the other, we'll see ourselves there, here, or in the middle. We'll find a
Yes.
way. Okay, so thank you so much, and to all of you, thank you so much for being here,
Thank you, everyone.
for your questions. Thank you, Paula, too, for loving this chat. Thank you, Jackie, for helping with the questions. And thank you, all of you. Thank you. See you all tomorrow. Thank you very much, Javier Rodriguez, too. Oh my God, stop. See you all tomorrow with Ana Oncina. You're gonna like it. And on Friday, and I know you're gonna love this, Sarah, a colorist panel with Tamra Bonvillain, with Laura Martin, and with Julia Brusco.
Oh, wow. Nice.
You gotta know about coloring comics. Those three color artists are geniuses, and you can't miss it. So, thank you. We're off. Put your mask. Don't be an asshole. Carmen sends you kisses. Kisses to you, Carmen, too. Carmen,
Yes.
bye bye. In 3,